Thank you, Kim. So I'm Nils Gilman. I work at the Berggruen Institute, which is a think and do tank in Los Angeles. And we have a number of different programs there. One of them is, and the reason why we're co-sponsor of the Athens Democracy Forum, is one of our initiatives centers on democracy and promoting democracy. And we specifically think at the Berggruen Institute about how to promote democracy, as we say, beyond the ballot box. And I want to make two provocations, actually, in this presentation. One is, how do we think beyond the ballot box in terms of going beyond voting? And also, how do we think beyond the ballot box in terms of going beyond thinking about democracy as a purely human, an exclusively human phenomenon? So let me talk about each of those. So in terms of going beyond the ballot box, one of the things that the Athens Democracy Forum has sponsored that we're very proud to be able to participate in is the citizens' assemblies. Citizens' assemblies, of course, are an example of going beyond the ballot box and saying that democracy should be something that one doesn't just do through voting, but one does on an ongoing and participatory basis. But I want to throw out one initial provocation here around thinking about democracy as going beyond even voting in a directed way. We heard earlier in the conference about AI, and particularly the way in which AI and social media present a threat to democracy in a variety of ways. But I want to suggest that there's possible to imagine a new kind of application, a new kind of digital avatar that people can create for themselves that would allow us to vote not just every 4 years or every 2 years or maybe even 1 year, but literally 1,000 times a day. This is an app that's actually in construction already. We can build a personal avatar, and you would imagine the way this would work is you would fill out a questionnaire saying what your personal preferences are about everything from democracy, abortion, economic matters, whatever it may be. And then you would also have your various social media harvesting information about your actual preferences on an ongoing basis. And then for every public policy matter at hand, your avatar would say, hey, we think your opinion on this particular topic is X. And then you would be able to say, yes, I agree with that opinion, or no, I disagree with that opinion. And over time, the avatar would learn to become more and more like your actual opinions. And this eventually would be a kind of digital twin, a digital mirror of who you are that could then actually weigh in on an ongoing basis continuously for you on every moment. So you wouldn't just get elite, democracy wouldn't just become a contest of you picking every couple of years between a couple of people who have been selected by parties. In other words, the elites will pick out the people you should choose between, and you get to choose every 4 years between a couple of those. You would actually get to vote continuously on an ongoing basis and expressing yourself continuously through this digital twin. This technology already exists, it's just not being deployed that way. I think that in 10 years, 20 years, or 100 years, this is actually going to be the way in which we participate in politics continuously. And for those of you who think this sounds a little bit scary, I would just say you have control of the avatar. The avatar is not controlling you. You can choose to approve or disapprove of what the avatar recommends for you, but it's kind of like a recommendation engine that you can then follow and have it express your opinions continuously. And this would be a very different way for politicians and for policymakers to think about being responsive towards their populations. Okay, so that's provocation number one, that we can think about technology enabling a new kind of participation and ongoing, continuous, liquid participation in democracy. But I want to talk about another thing that's perhaps even more radical as a provocation, which comes out of a different program at the Berggruen Institute concerning the future of the human. So democracy, as it was defined here in Athens more than 2,000 years ago, initially by Plato and Aristotle, has been considered traditionally an exclusively human affair. In fact, the way Aristotle defined the human was that we are the political animal, zoon politikon, as Aristotle said. And Aristotle said that the reason why humans are the only animal that has politics is because we're the only animals that have a language. But breakthroughs in science that are happening right now are really putting paid to the idea that humans are the only creatures that have language. And here AI and breakthroughs in the way we even conceive about animal and creaturely communications is really making a huge difference. And I want to give two examples that are happening right now in the United States with animal science. One of them is a bunch of former colleagues of mine at UC Berkeley in the forestry department have set up a whole series of sensor networks in the Sierra Nevada mountains in California that are actually tracking the pheromones of insects and forests to test stress levels that can allow them to predict whether there's going to be an insect colony collapse, or there's possibly going to be an infestation that might kill off the forests, or that might make them vulnerable to forest fires. And then they're using interpretive algorithms based on large language models to basically allow the forest and the creatures in the forest to speak. And so we can actually incorporate that, if we choose to, into our political practice. Now, currently, scientists stand up and say, well, we think the forest is doing badly. But again, we could allow, in the same way that we could have an avatar that would speak for us individually, the forest itself could have an avatar that would be able to speak. There's another project that's going on, led by David Gruber, who's a cetacean specialist. He studies whales. And he's been recording whale songs of sperm whales. And he's actually used a large language model to determine an actual grammar that different whales have. It turns out that whales give each other names, and they actually speak to each other in specific ways. So again, we could incorporate the perspectives of the whales into our politics. This is a wild idea because we tend to think that, again, politics should be about representation, and that if we wanted to include the perspectives of animals, we would have to have scientists represent them. But in the same way that the avatar could have us be represented, our voice be represented directly in politics rather than through an elected representative, we can imagine that the other creatures, non-human others, that have wills, that have opinions, could find themselves expressing themselves through AI and through large language models and then be able to express themselves directly. I think the central question is whether we're going to continue to have the anthropocentric bias and exclusionary view that only humans are worthy of being included in the political practice. And what I would like to close then with is thinking that we should think beyond the human to think about how do we include democracies that are multi-species. Thank you very much.